Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We are back again with God of War, an action-adventure hack-and-slash RPG from developer Santa Monica Studios. I have been hearing the hype about this game since it first released and finally had the time to sit down and play through it. After 20 plus hours with the game, I am prepared to talk about the experience, starting with what I like. The first thing that grabs you when viewing a screenshot or footage of this game is that it looks absolutely incredible, and it really doesn't matter what part of the game you are looking at. The environments are breathtaking, the enemy designs are amazing, Kratos and Atreus look fantastic, and they look even better as you give them higher quality arms and armor. The visual effects for the moves you can do and what the enemies do to you are also absolutely spectacular. It's pretty much impossible to be bored playing this game because even if you didn't care about Kratos and Atreus, everything always looks so phenomenal. Luckily, you probably will care about them because the father-son dynamic in this game is very well done. There is so much here that reminds me of my own experience with my father. My father has always been a hard man and he homeschooled me for 7 years. When I see Atreus withering under the constant barrage of Kratos' judgment, it brings back extremely strong memories. At the same time, the game does a great job of conveying that Kratos does care about his son and truly wants to help prepare Atreus for the trials to come. This is the best father-child relationship I have seen in a video game since Lee Everett and Clementine in The Walking Dead. Honestly, I think I like Kratos and Atreus' dynamic better than Clementine and Lee, in part because Atreus is super useful in combat, something that really isn't clear when you watch God of War footage. He can distract and stun enemies, engage in melee combat, and over time he gains different arrows that are very useful in clearing the environment. Every time I turn around, he is gaining a new fantastic ability that adds to my options when fighting. Kratos obviously feels like he has a long way to go, but in my mind, Atreus is already a warrior in his own right. Speaking of combat, it's absolutely fabulous thus far. I played the entire original God of War series, and when I found out this new game wouldn't have the Blades of Chaos, I immediately lost interest. In my mind, they are a necessary part of the campaign. There's definitely still a part of me that feels that way, but there's no denying the Leviathan Axe is an incredible weapon and a standout achievement for Santa Monica Studios. The hits feel powerful. Throwing the axe around and calling it back is a ton of fun. Fighting bare-fisted with Kratos at will is deeply satisfying, and having the shield available at all times adds a welcome layer of complexity to the defensive side of combat. The amount of RPG elements that have been added into God of War is staggering. From armors to axe pommels to enchantments and talismans, there's a huge number of ways for you to mold Kratos into the specific type of warrior you want him to be. I decided I love freezing enemies, so I've invested heavily in powers that do frost damage, and while my regular hit damage leaves much to be desired, I freeze enemies on a regular basis, and again, it's deeply satisfying. I am also really impressed with how side quests are handled in the game. In most games, you play through the main quest, and as you follow that path, you'll meet people who will give you side missions to venture on. Oftentimes, these missions can be handled in the same general area as your main quest. There's a little bit of that in God of War, but for the most part, to do side quests, you need to venture completely away from the main path. There were a couple of times I worried that I was wasting my time, adventuring through large areas that I would have to come back to for a main quest mission. But that's not the case. There are large areas with lots of content that are completely separate from your main quest. This game truly rewards exploration, and that enhances the overall experience. Finally, while I have issues with the story, I think a marvelous job was done in establishing the deep danger Kratos and Atreus are in. When a game makes the protagonist incredibly powerful, it is oftentimes difficult to provide an antagonist that the player actually believes is a problem. Kratos' first encounter with a villain called the Stranger and the promise of more villains like him to come does a phenomenal job of establishing that there is a real threat. Outside of that, enemies are extremely varied and the tactics you need to use against them vary significantly as well. Overall, I find myself constantly challenged by enemy groups. Quick note before we get to what I don't like so far about the game. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you hitting the like button. This information tells me which content the channel is enjoying and helps my videos spread to more people. I really appreciate all of the support. So I know this is probably sacrilegious to say, since this game seems to get a 10 rating score from everybody, but I am not impressed with the story, mainly because I feel like thus far there really isn't one. We have a task to take Atreus' mother's ashes to a mountain summit. How did his mother die? Why would Kratos start a new family considering what happened to his old one? Why is a stranger after Atreus? Why does Kratos know what the issue is but the player is not told? I am all about mysteries in games, but you have to mix in answers every once in a while. This game doesn't do that, so I feel like I am just plodding along with no real understanding of what is happening. In my opinion, that makes the main story thus far uncompelling. My last save is right in front of the mountain summit to drop off the ashes, and I still feel like I have no clue what's actually going on. As is clear from my earlier comments, the game itself is outstanding and keeps me chugging along, but I hope the main arc improves over time. On a related note, I think the story is also harmed by the lack of a clear main villain. This is, in my opinion, something else that is a staple of the God of War series. Kratos screaming out Ares' name everywhere you go is absolutely iconic. While the fight against Stranger is fantastic, he comes across as someone who is working for another person, and I haven't seen him since that first encounter. So to sum it up, after 20 hours, the story has little to no villain, a large stack of unresolved mysteries, and I don't really feel like I understand what is going on. Of course, all of this might significantly improve as the game goes on. A full review will be provided once I have finished the game. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.